year. As part of this series, the Academic Series Committee invites various experts in the field of biology to discuss their roles, what they do for a living, and potential tips towards getting where they are. Now, to kick off our first Careers in Bio of the year, we have Angela Hardman, a senior technologist in cytogenetics at the London Health Sciences Centre, or LHSC. So one fun fact is actually that Angela is a Western alumni and has completed her undergrad in genetics here. There is currently a severe shortage of trained genetic technologists in London right now, and Angela is here primarily shed light on this role, as well as the Michener Genetics Technology program at the Michener Institute in Toronto. We are truly honored to have Angela join us today, and we're extremely excited to learn more about this interesting career. So without further ado, let's start with the presentation.
All right, great. Thanks for the warm introduction. I'm speaking to you guys from my home. So if you hear the dogs barking or my kids in the background, just disregard it and we'll just keep going on. All right, so I got introduced already. My name is Angela. I am a Western biology alumni with honors in genetics. And I graduated the same year as the human genome was published, which is pretty cool. So if you want to know that year, you can Google that. So today I've been given an hour. I don't think I'll fill that whole hour, but I want to show you a few different slideshows, this one and a couple of different ones from Michener. And then at the end, I'll take a closer look of where I work and how I got there. And there'll be lots of time for questions and answers. And feel free to ask questions anytime throughout if something pops up or if it's not clear. All right, so we're talking about my timeline. So high school, I left high school interested in genetics. I grew up on a farm and we had a colony of cats, sort of like Hemingway's cats kind of thing. Anyways, got me interested in genetics. I went to UWO, did my undergrad in genetics. From there, I got interested in the Michener Institute. So I knew I liked genetics, didn't know what I wanted to do with it, wanted a job, said I would never work in healthcare. My mom worked in healthcare, she worked shifts. I didn't want to do that. So here I am working in healthcare, not working shifts, so that's an advantage. But to get to work in genetics and healthcare, you need certification, and there's only 2 schools in Canada that will certify you to work in human genetics. And the one is Michener, and the other one is in BC. And the day I graduated Michener, the next day, well, the Monday after, I started at LHSC, and I've been full-time there ever since. I just got a big award this year for the number of years I've been there. So, oh, wow. So I took biology in my undergrad. I wasn't interested in medicine. I'm not meant to be a doctor. I wasn't interested in nursing, but there are definitely positives and other places to go in the medical field, and the definite advantages. So the medical field is stable. It's long-term permanent employment. At the awards banquet this year, they had some that had been working with LHSC for 50 years, so long-term. Helping people. When I go to work, I'm not just making some rich guy richer, but every day I make a difference in people's lives. Yesterday I stayed late because I was working on a really critical patient, and I just felt that I could spend a few extra minutes to get something out the door. Medicine is always evolving. There's always something new, and there'll always be a need for health professionals. And medicine is recession and pandemic proof. So with this looming recession they keep talking about, and the pandemic, technologists are never laid off. The government doesn't threaten to lay off technologists. They forget we exist, I think, most of the time. And during the pandemic, we didn't miss a single day during lockdowns. So my kids are in high school thinking about careers, and one of the pieces of advice that they were given was to, during lockdowns, look at the people that are still working and consider that for a career. So definitely medicine checks that box. It was already mentioned how I think the whole medical field, actually probably the whole world, is feeling short-staffed right now. So at this point in your lives, it makes sense to follow the jobs. So there's a lot of medical professionals you may not know about. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next. I'm going to switch over to a different PowerPoint. We'll talk about Michener, what it is, and what they do here. So this presentation was provided by Michener to me, the Michener Institute. And this one's primarily going to talk about healthcare professionals that you may not know about. And then we'll talk about, there's another one that talks about just about Michener specifically. Oh, and I should say, like, why am I talking to you guys about this? You guys are at Western, you're doing your undergrad or maybe beyond. Programs at Michener, some of the programs you need undergrad to get into. So the genetics program, I needed my undergrad to get into the genetics program. It's a prerequisite. So it's very relevant to you at your stage. So Michener has land acknowledgement here. They're very encompassing and welcoming to all groups. And they just want to acknowledge where the land is, where it was built. So it's located in Toronto. The actual building, Michener, is located in Toronto, right behind Mount Sinai, so downtown. So think about how many medical professionals can you name? So if I ask my kids, I'm sure they would say doctor, nurse, maybe dentist. My one wants to be a physical therapist. So many more. On the left of the screen, it's more your traditional health science professionals, surgeons, kinesiologists. And on the right-hand side are the other ones that people don't even think about existing. Anesthesia assistant, cardiovascular perfusionist, which I actually didn't even know what it was. I had to look up. Cytogenetics, nuclear medicine technologists, they administer chemotherapy. Sonographer, like somebody that does an ultrasound. Medical laboratory scientist, chiropodist, there's the dogs. Radiation therapist, that kind of thing. There's lots, many, many more. So Michener, the dogs. Michener Institute is considered the only institution in Canada devoted exclusively to the applied health sciences education. And they specialize in training people, professions you might not have heard of. So if I was in my undergrad, if I was picturing myself working in a hospital, where would I want to work? Well, I'm not a frontline person. That's fine. Lots of people are. They're very important. Working with technologies and computers, I'm okay with that, but I'm not the best. What about working in a laboratory setting? That would be something that would appeal to me. So this is the one that appeals to me, but other things might be interested in is medical laboratory sciences, more general, cytology of cells, and genetics. So this is a slide that talks for a minute about medical laboratory science. They're more of a general field where they're trained in 5 core disciplines. You can work in one, you can work in all. And doing diagnostics. So kind of like being the people in CSI, but actually doing the work, and it takes a little bit longer than on TV. Cytology is looking at the cells, so it's a different field. And genetics. So Michener gave me this slide deck, and I thought, oh, I'll have a look through, see if there's anything that would be interesting. So I saw this picture, and I was like, I think I know that person. Oh, I know both of those people because they both work in London, which is pretty amazing that Michener trains people and they go off and live all across Canada working in genetic labs. And the two that are in my lab of 11 are here on this picture. So the genetics technology is divided into 2 fields of study, molecular and cyto. I work in cyto. So these are different professions that are more hands-on. If you're interested in something hands-on like respiratory therapy, they were super important during COVID. Oh my goodness. Cardiovascular perfusion, ultrasound, radiation, nuclear medicine, and radiology. The respiratory therapy, it's basically keeping airways open. Again, super important during COVID, but always important. These are all things that you can take at Michener. So cardiovascular perfusion. So they basically run the heart-lung machine during open heart surgeries, which is pretty amazing. Like if you were interested in surgery, that would be something super interesting to be into, field to be into. Ultrasound. I've had lots of ultrasounds with my kids, and I have a thyroid thing going on. So ultrasound techs are important. And interestingly, at LHSC get paid a little bit extra. So a newer field that I'm not as familiar with is the digital health and data analytics field. If you graduated from this, took this, I guess it's a diploma, I would knock on the doors at LHSC Genetics and see if they could find a place for you. Genetics is number crunching, data crunching, and they have lots of need for digital resource management. I know we had recently, not us, but the genetics department as a whole had a computer science major as a co-op student because they didn't have a background in science at all, but it's just because they need so much computer work. So I talked about earlier how I graduated the year the human genome was published, and it took them 10 years and $1 billion with labs all across the world to get that genome published. And now we do it on our floor overnight for $1,000. And it's been 20 years. So it's the strength of computers that's brought genetics to where it is today. So here's another slide about the digital health. So that's kind of the end of this one. Michener has a great website. You can reach out to them at different places if you're more interested in applying to any of those programs. So I'm going to switch to this one. Okay. Okay, so why Michener? So it was established in '58. It's been around a long time. One of the interesting things is Michener gets a lot of its money from health and long-term care. So like the Ministry of Health funds Michener. So the Ministry of Health is in the business of health, not education. So what I'm trying to say is the Ministry of Health is only going to pay for student placements and students for fields they need. So if you take any of the programs at Michener, you're basically going to have a job waiting for you when you're done. And they call it an institute. I mean, the high school I went to, they call it an institute too, but they can't call it a college or university because it's not funded by the Ministry of Education. So it's kind of this other thing. And the genetics program is 2 years, and it's post-secondary. So it's kind of like a master's, but it's not because it's funded by the Ministry of Health. So they call it a diploma. It's just words. So Michener has a focus on healthcare. Some of the programs are very rare, like the genetics program. Michener is very career driven. If you are thinking about a career, you want a specific path, one of the programs there would be the way to go. It says here that Michener graduates working full-time within 6 months is consistently over 95%. I'll tell you in the genetics program that 100% of graduates work the day after they graduate. Right now in Canada and in North America, there's a drastic shortage of genetics technologists, especially cytogenetics technologists. In my lab, we've had 40% retire in the past year, and we just don't have the students graduating to fill those roles. We have 2 students in right now, and we've offered positions to both of them. They're not even done the program yet. So Michener would put you in part of the healthcare system. It's cutting edge, it keeps up to date. it's very hands-on. So they describe Michener as a school within a hospital, and it's definitely run that way. All the programs, I think all the programs, you spend a portion in school and you spend a portion actually in the field getting hands-on training before you start working. So that's what we're doing right now. We've got 2 students in right now, and they're getting hands-on. They have a curriculum they follow in the lab, and we show them exactly how we do things in lab with real patients or backups of real patients, so that the day they graduate, we can put them to work right away. And that's the plan. So Michener has small class sizes. Faculty are really experienced. A lot of them, especially the genetics ones, used to work as genetic technologists, same thing as me, but they found a calling in teaching, so now they work at Michener training the next generation. Heart, I mean, if you work in medicine, you have to have heart. Now, I know Michener programs are super competitive to get into. I've heard it compared to being as difficult to get into as medicine. There's an application process, there's interviews, there's hands-on. 1,000 people apply for 16 positions. It's competitive. Yeah, so they're going to take the best. Michener is great because it has real, like they try to do, they call it SimClin, with simulated clinical. They try to have as close of to real life labs as possible in the school, so that you can practice in the educational setting, so you come out like ready to go. And it's more of a bit more of a caring attitude versus, you know, getting tossed into a research lab. They just want to set their students up for success. So different program offerings. I was talking a little bit about at the beginning. These are, okay, direct entry programs is something you can come into straight out of high school. Probably not so much interest for this audience because you guys are already in your undergrad. These programs, so nuclear medicine, radiation therapy, and radiological technology, you need some university to get into. Now, they're usually associated with the University of Toronto. If you guys are interested in that, coming from Western, I don't know about that, but it would definitely be worth talking to Michener to see if you would qualify to switch into this program without completing your full undergrad. These are the programs which are a little more interesting. They require an undergrad degree to get into. So like mine, genetic technology, but also cytology, tropomy, the digital health, and the cardiovascular perfusion. So it's kind of like taking a master's. I mean, if I'm going to fill out a generic questionnaire, I'm going to say that I have a master's, but it's not technically a master's. Now, I will say that people with masters or even foreign trained PhD students will take the genetics technology program, just because it certifies you and trains you and gives you a career when you're done. It sets you up for future. So Michener also has other continuing education courses. So look into those if you want to just take a little bit of interest course in something that might help in the future. And it's a full school. It's not a big one, but a full school with all the accessories you would expect. So with a gym and a peer tutoring. They have a residence on site. So even though it's Toronto, I didn't want to live in Toronto when I started, but I got through it. It's just not my thing. Grew up on a farm. And it's so handy to be there. So there's questions about that, but I will go on back to my other PowerPoint and we'll do like a more of a bigger question thing, I think, unless somebody wants to have questions now. All right. Oh, you know what? I realized I don't have my camera on, do I? That's kind of silly. Yeah. Yeah, that's better. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I didn't have that on.
No worries.
Sorry about that. So why genetics? It's a growing field. Personalized medicine. So the word personalized medicine gets tossed around a lot because it's kind of the way things are going. I was working on a whole bunch of different types of cases today. One of them was breast cancer. So I was looking at the HER2 gene in breast cancer tumor samples. And if that gene is amplified, They know that a certain drug will work well on those patients. So if they have the amplification, they get the drug, and if they don't get the drug because it's not going to work. So it's pretty amazing the way, especially oncology, cancer is going, that we know if we look at the changes, the genetic changes in the cancer cells, if we see certain things, we know certain drugs will work. So it's personalized medicine. It's amazing. We've kind of just started to scrape the surface. It's definitely an emerging field. So again, we're just beginning to unlock the power of genetics with personal medicine. So no more guesswork, no just guessing if something will work for you or not. Let's know before we try it. Okay, so let's talk about my actual job. Take a minute, grab your phone and Google genetic technologist at LHSC. Yeah, there's postings, they were renewed yesterday. I know both molecular and cytogenetics have openings right now. So if you click and Google it, this is what comes up. This is on the careers at LHSC.on.ca website. It talks about our rate of pay. It starts at $33.32 an hour and goes up to $44.66 an hour. And the way that works is every year you get one step up until you reach the top step. We don't negotiate. We have a union. They do that for us. Everybody's getting paid equally. There's no fighting for raises. It's there. So we also have a really we have a good benefit package. It's not the best, but we do have medical, dental. That can be really big, especially for people like me that wear glasses and need drugs. We have one of the best pensions out there. Not quite as good as the teachers, but we're in OPSU and we have a really good pension. Well, that's why we've had some past year got through the pandemic and decided they were out. And because we have such great pensions, they can do that. It says my connection's unstable, so that's fun. So that's, if you Google that, you can see what the posting would be. So one of the things I actually worked on today, I talked about HER2, but this is a metaphase if people have taken human genetics. So if you look at this metaphase, this is oncology case, so cancer cell, and you can see these chromosomes, they're like stripy worms. Michener teaches you all about how to read them. When I first saw them, I thought, no way. But it's just pattern recognition. It's similar to learning a written language. If I look at Arabic writing right now, it doesn't make any sense to me, but I know that if I took the time to learn to read it, I could. Chromosomes are the same way. So we start with this, and then we move it around to this. So this is the karyotype from that same cell in the previous slide. If you look at this, I'm sure you can see that there's a few changes going on. So a human cell should have 46 chromosomes and in pairs, aside from the sex chromosomes. This is a male, so it's out of X and Y. But you can see in the cell all the changes. If you look at the 5, the one on the left is small. The one on the right is actually, the bands are not in the correct order. The 6 looks funny, 7 is too small, the 8 is missing the top, the 9 is gone, 13 small, the 14 looks funny, 16 small, 17 has an extra piece on it, 20 small, and then there's all those little things at the bottom. Those are called double minutes. So this is an oncology cell in a human that's walking around, living his life. I mean, probably not all that healthy, but definitely with us still. Cancer changes your genetics. So that's what we see in this cell. So we've reported this. We have a set of nomenclature that we report. So this went out today to the doctor, and they'll be able to see that and get a prognosis for this patient and know how hard they need to treat this patient with the treatment options that are available. So I did that today. So this is nearing the end. So my conclusions, consider taking a program at Michener to get you started in your new career or your next year or first year. And I've got lots of time for questions. And these are my dogs that have been barking, so they're part of the reasons why I'm interested in genetics. But I've got lots of time for questions if anybody has anything. Stop there.
We have Sierra here who has a question. Just I hate to say your name, actually.
Yeah, no, seriously. I
Okay,
was just
cool, great.
wondering, you said how competitive that Michener is.
Right.
Is there anything in specific you could do to like give yourself an edge to get in?
I would definitely prep. So you definitely take the courses that are recommended, the more the better. Prep when you go for the interview, like you're going to prep for a job interview. Those are the type of interview questions that they'll ask. They also do like a hands-on, like I can't remember what's that called. Like when you get a hands-on test when they're training. They really just want to assess how you would be at a lab bench. So they're going to give you stress tests and like not stress tests, but like ask you to do a task with a timer on, that kind of thing. So I would prep for it with like you're going to prep for a job interview. Yeah, I think that's one of the better things.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madison?
Hi, how are you? First, I just want to say
Thanks.
thank you so much. It was an awesome presentation. And your dogs are super cute.
Thanks.
I was just wondering, how long was your genetics program at?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So it's 2 years. It's not quite 2 years. Our students graduate in the end of February. I think it says on the Michener web, or like on the website, it's about 2 years. I think you spend about a year at Michener. You spend about half a year doing practical, like they call it the simulated clinical is like it's over a month, I think, where it's like you're in the lab, but you're still at the school. And then they spend, I think it's 16 weeks with us, something like that. It's the outlines are all on the Michener's website though. Yeah, so basically it's about 2 years.
Awesome, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Stephen has a question.
Right. Hi. So like what other sorts of things do you do in the lab? I know you showed us like the gene sequence or whatever that you were analyzing, but like just other things.
Yeah, so I'm in our labs in London are divided into molecular and cytogenetics. So I'm in cytogenetics. So we do all things chromosome. So it traditionally we would have done a lot of microscope work. Now we have a robot that actually captures the metaphases for us. So we do analysis, computer analysis. We take those metaphases, cut them apart. I do computer work, or we do every day with. We still do our fish, which is fluorescent in situ hybridization, and we do that under the scope, still manually under the scope. So we're looking at fluorescent cell images of cells under the scope. So our samples come in the door as plain blood, bone marrow, amniotic fluid, chorionic villi, paraffin-embedded tumors, products of conception, skin punch biopsies. That's about it. We get all stages of life from birth to old age, and prenatals, including prenatals. So they come through the door and we have to prep them into readable samples. So with constitutional oncology and microarray, we do microarray as well for a lot of developmental issues. So, like I said, there's currently 11 technologists in lab. We could stand probably 3 or 4 more, and we get about 6,000 samples a year. So it's a lot, but it's still, we do a lot of hands-on because to get metaphases, you need to grow the cells. So it takes time to do that. So there's definitely a lot of variation, and like that cell that I just showed you, I've never seen one exactly like that before, like that metaphase. So there's lots of variety too, and the field's always growing. When I started, a few years ago. We do so many more tests, more technologies that we have now. It's always so it's interesting. There's always something interesting. Oh, and so that's the site. Oh, I should mention about the molecular side of it. Molecular is more sequence-based. So they have next generation sequencers where they do that. They have Ion Torrent. So PCR sequencing, they run next gen panels on next gen. And they work with blood, bone marrow, paraffin embedded tissue as well. So they're more the sequencing based things. They also, and methylation is really big in London, at London Health Sciences Center. It's called translational research right now because it is a little bit research based, but they're working on getting it into the medical field, like at the everyday practice. So there's a section of the molecular lab that's it's called translational medicine. So it's research meets real life. So when people say, hey, you work in genetics, you must work in research. I say, no, I don't. I do, there is a research component to my job, but mostly I'm in diagnostics. I'm in everyday diagnostics.
Awesome, thanks so much. I find it very interesting that there's so much variation. I feel like you never
yeah.
get bored, never seeing the same thing twice.
Yeah. You never get bored. There's always something. Yeah. It's pretty amazing that way.
We have Madeline with another question or with a question.
Yeah. Hi. Speaking of like all the variation in your job, is there a specific area of research or a project that is, I guess, your favorite or you're most interested in?
Sure, that's a great question. So if you talk to, so I'm a technologist level. Below me is a technician, or we call them medical lab assistants. So they're kind of like a technologists do the judgment and the development. Technicians kind of do the more just basic stuff. It's kind of like the difference between a doctor and a nurse. And above us, there's a director. So directors are the ones that put the official stamp on everything, direct the new technology. And that's a whole different path to get into. They start with PhDs and go from there. So if you ask a director, every director, a cytogenetics director will have a favorite chromosome. Everybody has a favorite chromosome. Dr. Knoll, who's been with us for a long time, her favorite is chromosome 15. And she does that because she did research and discovered the methylation center on the chromosome 15 and how it causes Angelman in some and Prader-Willi in the other when there's deletions in that area. So that was research she actually did. What my favorite thing is, I'm kind of like a mom in the lab. I'm a senior technologist, so my role is to oversee everybody. I'll keep everything, and I'm like the senior, like kind of like the leader of the lab. So because I'm like the mom, that I don't have a favorite, that I love everything. Yeah.
Matt, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for your presentation. I was just curious about how, I don't know if, I'm sorry if I missed it during your presentation, but
That's okay.
I was just wondering how your role has like maybe changed since you started. Like, I guess what opportunities are there that maybe become more available to you as you get more experience, or like moving to different in between different projects, or like I know you mentioned that there are like other roles like technicians and you're a technologist. Like, are there other, I guess, pathways for someone who enters this field that they can go in the future?
Sure. So a lot of technologists that come in start as a technologist, finish as a technologist. They find enough variety in their life that's what keeps that they're happy with that. There's always new projects, new developments, all the new technologies that come in. When I started, we had one person that did 100% of our oncology samples, and now 70% of our work is in oncology. When I came in, we had a handful of testing, and our variety of testing has doubled, and the number of tests has increased. So if development's your thing, you can definitely find a niche in the lab for that. As far as moving beyond a technologist, the next step is senior technologist. That's what I am. So I kind of oversee the lab. There's not too many of those, but they're definitely needed. So it's definitely a leadership. Clinical educator. So I also have that title right now of clinical educator. So I work directly with Michener to train our students in lab. So I go to Michener every year. Well, it's virtual now, for a meeting to talk about the future of the program. So I help direct the program at Michener, and there's one of those in every genetics lab. Above the senior technologist is a coordinator, so that's more of a management role. So somebody who used to be a technologist who moved into senior technologist has now moved into coordinator, just the pathway that his path has taken. So he doesn't do bench work or lab work anymore. He is more in a management role. So he oversees, there's 2 genetics plus biochemistry lab at LHSC, and he oversees them. He does a little bit more of the management. He does all the management of them, so coordinating with higher levels and funding and hiring and setting the future direction of the labs at LHSC. There's also, there's other committees outside the lab. So we have people that work inside the lab, but we need somebody on the safety committee. So she's involved in the safety committee. We had somebody that was really interested in the safety committee, and he actually is the co-chair of the LHSC safety committee. He works in the lab, but he does the safety committee as a part of his time in lab. So that's encompasses a lot of what the other opportunities that would be in lab. Now, people from Michener can go into a healthcare, but they also could go into more of a research based, and there's more privatized healthcare that have cropped up too. So there's definitely opportunities beyond just being a bench tech in a hospital.
That's great. Thank you.
Madison, you have another question?
Yeah, I kind of have like 2 questions. First, I just wanted to say, you said that you can go from like technologist to senior technologist, and then there's coordinator after that. Is there more schooling? I'm sorry. Is there more schooling for that, or is it kind of just something that you can move to?
Yeah, so I didn't do any extra education to move into senior technologist. I have been there for a long time, which definitely helps. And I believe LHSC probably has like a course they'll put a leadership program that you put you through. I personally can't justify the time right now. Right, our backlog is extensive right now, and every minute that I'm not focused on directly on a patient case is a patient that is waiting even longer. So I haven't focused on that right now. And the same with the person that has the clinical educate or the coordinator. I don't think he's done anything extra. He may have done that leadership program when we weren't quite as busy. But there's no direct thing that you have to. Now, I do have people do choose to do extra things on their own time. So somebody in our program right now is very more interested in, I couldn't tell you the name of the program that she's taking, but it's kind of like healthcare, like leadership in healthcare and quality control. So she's doing that on the side. So it may, bounce her out of the lab into more of a quality management side of the hospital. So you don't have to do anything. It just depends on where your interests lie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I also just wanted to ask if there was anything like to kind of change the direction. Is there anything you don't like about your job, or anything that you like wish that you knew like before you like got the position?
Yeah, that's a great idea, or a great question. One of the things, genetics lab is very specialized. A lot of those programs that Michener offers are very specialized. So you can't work, like they're not offered in every hospital. I grew up outside of Ingersoll. Ingersoll has a little hospital. They do not have a genetics lab. So the genetics labs in Ontario are London, Hamilton, there's several in Toronto, Ottawa, Kingston, Sudbury, and that's it. So if you lived in Guelph or you wanted to stay in Guelph, there's not one that's a convenient driving distance from Guelph, just as an example. And other provinces, they're in like the major cities. So like Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Calgary, Edmonton, Victoria, Halifax, St. John's. and that's most of them across Canada. So, you know, if you really have to decide you want to live near a major urban center if you want to be in a genetics lab. So that's something I didn't think about. Being specialized like that, it's great because I'm like I know where I'm going to work. I'm in demand, and it's a pretty rare specialty. But also, if I decide I want to do something different, if my husband's an accountant, if he has a bad day at work, a bad month, doesn't like his boss, doesn't like the people he's working, he comes home, he looks for another job. He's moved, you know, a couple times over the years we've been together. If I have a bad day, bad month, if I want to move to somewhere else, I could maybe switch to the molecular lab because I'm cross-trained, so I could work in both. But if I want to leave my hospital, I'd have to go to Hamilton, would be the closest. So I'm going to be uprooting myself to Hamilton. So that's definitely a negative. Healthcare, the money's, it's good and the stability is great, but the money's not amazing, right? So again, my husband works in big business, so sometimes I think maybe healthcare is it's definitely one of the disadvantages of healthcare. But again, I make a positive difference. I'm not just making somebody get rich. So there's a trade-off there. And I mean, the stress, it's busy, very busy. Like I said, I stayed late to work on a patient yesterday. That's not something that I have to do. It's not mandatory. Our union protects us from that, but it is nagging that I can't do more. So stress, it's a stressful job too. So those are some of the negatives.
Those are definitely super nice to be able to consider, because it is a lot to have to uproot like your family to move. Is your like work-life balance pretty good? Like most days do you just kind of work 9 to 5 or
Yeah, I find my work-life balance is really good. One of the things, I mean, it's probably different in every lab, but in my lab, we really let people choose the hours that they work. We can't pay them extra, we can't decrease their stress, but we can let them work the hours they want to work, as long as it's, you know, consistent. We kind of want them there at the same time every day. So I chose to work 7 till 3 every day. I find that works really well in my personal life. It definitely helps when I've got kids at home that need rides to go all over Christmas. And we have overtime on right now because we're so short-staffed. So I choose to work that before work. Just because it works for me. So it helps the work-life balance before we get, I think you start with 3 weeks after a vacation per year. After 2 years, I think it's 2 years, you move to 4 weeks vacation, which is pretty good for starting career. And then we get all our stat holidays off. Genetics labs in London work on Monday to Friday. Now, if someone does have to come in on Saturday to the Cyto lab, but we rotate through that, so it ends up being 1 Saturday a month. And overtime is always optional. So it definitely leads to a good work-life balance. I find too, when I leave the lab, I close the door and I walk away, and I don't think about it again until I come back the next day, especially as a bench tech. As a senior, I have a little more responsibility, not much more pay, but a little bit more responsibility. So it does worry me a little bit more. But as a bench tech, it's really amazing for that. It's not like, you know, some professions that you have to bring it home. Yeah, it doesn't follow you home.
That's really nice. It's also nice that you're able to choose your hours. I feel like that definitely helps, like you said, when you have like kids at home.
Yeah,
I feel like it's like a very big burden, especially like in healthcare. Like those hours that you're working, especially like with young kids.
right. Yeah, and some people just aren't morning people, right? So we have some people that they don't want to come in before 9, so that's perfect. They come in at 9, and we have some people that they do the opposite thing with our spouse, where they stay home, get their kids off to school, and then they come into work. So they start at 9:30, and then they stay late to make up the full 7.5. We get paid for 7.5. We're there for 8 hours a day. So it's as long as somebody comes in early and somebody stays late, as long as the work gets done, we're flexible that way. Yeah, really helps.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm sorry I had so many.
No, it's good. It's great. It's been great.
All right. I had a question. Sorry,
Sure.
Stephen. So my question is like, did you have any particular experiences in your undergrad career that I thought was helpful in getting you to where you are today? Or even just like things we should take advantage of right now while we're still in undergrad?
Sure, that's a great question. I would, I mean, take as many courses as you can that focus on the field that you're interested in. And if you can get into a fourth year research project in that field, it definitely would help. The more hands-on you can get, the better. And aside from that, I'm sure it's changed a lot since I was there 20 years ago. But I think just, yeah, kind of do what you can and yeah, like think about, you know, especially if you get to choose topics for projects and things, think about, you know, medical diagnostics and doing your projects on those kind of topics, just to help kind of get you ahead when you start the Michener program. The Michener program, to be honest, it's not that difficult. It's a lot, but it's not like, it's almost a little bit more like going back to high school because it's the same group of people doing the same thing every day. It's not super hard. Like it's, yeah, I don't know how to say it properly, but I'm just saying it's like, if you can get through your undergrad, you'll be perfectly fine at Michener.
Okay. Stephen, do you still have a question or they?
It was like a
Steven.
similar question, but you just mentioned undergrad. I know your undergrad degree, like you had a genetics degree. Did you find that having an undergrad in genetics made you stand out in the application process? Like, was it better to have that background in genetics applying to the Michener institution?
I'm sure it doesn't hurt. Like, the more genetics you can have to try to get into a genetics program, and it makes sense that you would have it. I'm trying to think of the people that I work with, if they all have genetics. Some of them, I think most people do have straight genetics. I know not all universities offer genetics, and we've had some that have come from smaller or different. Can you hear my dog deflating in the background? So we've had some that have come from different universities that haven't had straight genetics program. So they must have had just a more general biology background, and it was definitely, they got into the program, so it, you know, that's possible as well. When I went, the other path to get in is to have a general MLT. So general MLT, you can start straight out of high school, and then so it's a 3 or 4 year program, and it trains you for all the 5 different disciplines for MLT, and then you take the 2 years and specialize. Now that's not as common to do, just because the MLTs are really in demand, and we don't get paid any more in genetics than they do as a general MLT. So it's kind of almost a waste of time, kind of. When I was a student at Michener, we had some out of province people that were general MLTs that their hospitals were sponsoring them to come in and take the program. So they had somebody to work in the field. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
No, yeah, it's just because like genetics, it interests me, right? But like there's so many things that interest me, so
yeah, right.
I just kind of keep my options open, right? I don't want to commit to one thing and then.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And if I mean, just take it, like, see what the minimum requirements are, and if you have that, then follow your other interests. And if your path leads you back to genetics, it does. And if it leads you somewhere else, then maybe that is what you're supposed to do somewhere else, right?
Awesome, thank you.
Do we have any last minute questions?
I'll ask one then. Yeah. So just kind of from the start to now, kind of now that you've gained those years of experience, how would you say you're kind of, I know you've kind of touched on this, but how would you say your outlook, like your impressions on the job have changed, like now that you have that experience, working, like just like work, daily work wise, things like that?
when I started, I would never believe that we've got like genetics has come as far as it has. So it's definitely increased. I can't even imagine what it'll be like when I become ready to retire. As far as if I was going to do this over again, sitting where you guys are now in your undergrad, if I was at that place, I would 100% do this again. It was a good path for me, and I would do it again. If I had not started my undergrad degree, I might look at some of the Michener programs where there are dual certificate. So Michener has some dual certificate programs where you get a degree and your certification to work in. I think it's a lot of it's like cancer treatment. I might take a different path if I was going to do it, but I really do like genetics and the field I'm in and the work that I'm in. I wish it was less stressful most days and I had more help, but I'm pretty glad that I did take the path that I did. I don't know that I'm meant for big business like my husband is. And I know for sure that I'm not meant for teaching. Like I like what I do in the lab, but I can't imagine being one of my kids' teachers sitting in front of a high school class. And I knew I wasn't meant for research. I like coming in and knowing what I'm going to do every day. I like knowing that my funding is not going to run out. I just don't have the heart for research that some people do. I work with somebody who does, and it's amazing. I really admire him, but it's just not who I am. So I guess I am, when you think about it that way, I'm pretty happy with the path that I took.
All right, so last call for questions. Okay, looks like there aren't any more. So are we free to like contact you, your email there if you have, more questions?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
sure.
perfect. Yeah, so yeah, if you guys do have more questions, you can reach out to Angela through her email right there. But anyways, thank you all for coming to our event today. And thank you for Angela too, for agreeing to speak about like all her different experiences.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks
you.
everyone. Have a great night.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.